Hello, team! So we have been working for quite some time on writing drafts of poems, and today you are going to select the one poem that you would like to develop for your final draft that will be submitted to me to be put in a class slideshow. More details on that later. But we're going to start as usual by very quickly reviewing our notes about poems. If you want to read through the whole list yourself, feel free to pause on the next slide and take it all in. I'm feeling like we've read it a lot. I'm going to speed round through our notes about poems. All right. Sensory details. Rhyme and not rhyme. Short lines, long lines. About anything. Write about an object using personification. You might use alliteration. Short lines, long lines. Again. Stanzas. Same number of lines in the stanzas. Shape. Helps you know what it's about. Have to use it? Nope, but you can. Repeat words and phrases using repetition. Use words that sound like what the poem's about, onomatopoeia. Got it? Get it? Good. Okay. Pause if you need to. We're going to start by pausing and thinking, as usual. Thinking caps on. As you're looking through your poems, what might you want to look for when trying to decide on a poem that you want to develop further? Remember, this is going to be your most special poem, the one that you like the absolute most. Some of you, it might be an easy choice. Some of you might be like, I like all of mine. Some of you might be like, I don't like any of mine. Choose one. You're going to pick one, you're going to develop it, and that means you're going to be spending a lot of time with this poem. We're going to be editing it. Make sure you choose one that you want to work on. If you're stuck between two and you want to put in extra time, you can totally submit two to me. That is absolutely okay. Two, however, will be my max, and they will need to be fitting on the same slide, so keep that in mind. Pause and think. Look for the one that you want to take the time to develop further. Possible things you might have considered when you were picking out your poem are maybe that you wanted your poem with the best sensory details. Maybe you wanted to pick a poem that had super interesting sounds. Maybe you wanted a poem that's different from everyone else's, so you wanted to pick your poem that is the most unique. Maybe you wanted something that's not on this list. That's cool too. No worries. Okay? Okay. Now we're moving on to a guided reading of our drafts. We are going to carefully reread the draft that you picked, and we're going to be editing it. We're going to be adding to it, revising, and just generally improving that poem. So I'm going to ask you to take a moment to pause and read your poem through twice. I want you to read it once in your head, and then I want you to read it once out loud, because sometimes we catch things when we read them out loud. So go ahead and pause here. And now that you're back and you've read your poem once in your head and once out loud, I want you to find what editing tools that you have available. This is going to look different for everybody, especially because some of you are using pencil and paper and some of you are using Office 365 to write your poems. If you're using pencil and paper, go ahead and find a different colored pencil or sticky notes if they're available. You could also cut paper into small squares and tape them on, or you could just write your notes in a different color on the poem itself. If you're using the computer, you might just change the color of the font and type in notes in that new color. You might also be able to insert a text box. Maybe you're already making slides. You could just enter a text box with your editing notes. But no matter what, I do want you to find a way to take notes. Remember, notes can be messy, right? You're going to be writing directly on your poem because you're going to be rewriting it later. So now I want you to find one place in your poem where you describe or could describe something using sensory details. You're either going to write next to it or put a sticky note or whatever method you're using saying sensory detail. If you have a sensory detail, you're going to write sensory detail next to it. If you just found a place where you can put a sensory detail, you're going to write sensory detail. Okay? Once you've done that, I want you to pause. And I want you to think about what you hope your reader is going to imagine when they read that line or phrase. So go ahead and pause. Next, we're going to talk about the sounds. So this is going to require either 3 sticky notes or 3 markings on your page. Do the sounds of the words help your reader understand what the poem is about? Does it help communicate that to them? So find a place where you might be able to use, sorry, I'm confused on my own slide. Find a place where you might be able to use automatopoeia or add some interesting sounding words. Find a place where you might or already use alliteration or repetition to create sound in your poem. So this should be 3 S's, or 3 sounds, or 3 sticky notes, where the sounds of the words in your poem help communicate what your poem is about. If you don't find 3, are you in trouble? No. Does it mean that you're going to do a bad job? Absolutely not. Is every poem going to be the same? No way. So, find some places in your poem. This isn't a time, though, to just say, oh, I don't feel like adding it. No, come on. Let your brain do the work. Go through and try to find, even if you don't end up adding automatopoeia, even if you don't end up putting alliteration or repetition in your final draft, I want you to at least consider it and find a place where you could do that, okay? I do believe, especially with poetry, creative freedom is so important, so I'm not going to force you to add things in your poem if you don't like them, all right? But I want you to at least practice using those skills. So you are going to put your self-stick notes and write sound on them, or write sound on the page, or write an S of a place where you can add one of those 3 sounds, okay? Next, I want you to think about if your poem has a particular shape. If it does the shape help communicate what the poem is about? Maybe your shape is stanza form. Maybe your shape is that, like the poem Egg, it is about the object you wrote about. And I want you to think, if you can change the shape that you chose to better communicate what the poem is about, write on the sticky note or on the page or on your document, shape. And I want you to write exactly what you change about it. So if your poem is about a baby chick, and you wrote your poem in the shape of an egg, but you instead want to try to make it in the form of a chicken, or like a little chicken coop, you would write shape. Change to chicken coop. Does that make sense? So if you wrote shape and you have 3 stanzas but you want to make it down to 2 stanzas, you would write shape. Change from 3 stanzas to 2 stanzas. I hope that makes sense and that's clear. If you don't want to change anything about yours, say shape. It has a shape and I like it. Now we're moving on to writing time. You're going to review the things that you've marked on your page or your sticky notes. So you should have several things marked on your paper by now. You are going to make those changes or revise. So if you said that you want to change your shape, you go back and change your shape. If you said you want to add alliteration, go ahead and add that alliteration into your poem. Then you will either remove the notes or just put a check mark next to where you wrote it on the page. If you're on the computer, you can just backspace and delete your note. As long as you made the change and you're happy with that change, you can get rid of it. If you would like to change the shape and you're on the computer, you might want to consider writing your poem on paper for your final draft, or just being very patient with yourself while changing the shape online. I know when I was trying to type out egg and cricket, the computer kept doing things I didn't want to do. It was forcing me to make the first line with a capital letter, so I had to kind of toy around with that for a little bit. It involved a lot of time and a lot of backspacing and a lot of retyping. So understand that it's not necessarily going to be super easy at first if you're typing it. If you are frustrated with it and it feels like too much, just don't do it on the computer. Just go ahead and decide to write that one on paper, and that's okay. All right? If necessary, you can also continue adding to your poem. All right? That's your 20 to 30 minute writing time today. I'm excited to see what you come up with, and I hope you enjoy revising your poems. Till next time.